7 years ago, David Chen was nobody. Junior technician fresh from academy training. Assigned to Joint Thessari Human Military Cooperation Program. Eager, competent enough to pass evaluations, but unremarkable among dozens of other junior personnel trying to establish themselves in competitive alliance military environment. Commander Serafina was rising star. Thessari tactical officer with distinguished combat record. 5 years of frontline experience. Commanding respect from senior officers and building reputation that suggested eventual elevation to fleet command. She was everything David wasn't. Established, proven, confident in her position and her trajectory. They worked together briefly. Support operation where David's technical expertise was needed alongside Serafina's tactical command. The operation was successful. David performed his assigned duties competently. Serafina achieved her operational objectives. At the operation's conclusion, during routine personnel evaluation, Serafina delivered assessment of David's performance to their shared superior officer. David was present. Standard protocol for joint operations required personnel being evaluated to hear assessments directly. Technician Chen is adequate for routine support work. Serafina stated with the professional detachment that military evaluations require. His technical competence meets baseline standards. However, he lacks the initiative and strategic thinking that would make him valuable beyond basic implementation of others' plans. He's support personnel, useful in that capacity, but without potential for advancement beyond technical specialist roles. Then she delivered the line that David would remember for 7 years. He's nothing more than what he currently is. I see no future development worth investing command attention in. The words were delivered without malice, just professional assessment from experienced officer about junior technician's limited potential. She didn't say it to hurt him. She said it because that was her honest evaluation based on the limited interaction they'd had during the operation. David stood there and took the assessment without visible reaction, thanked her for her evaluation, continued with his assigned duties, but the words settled into him. She looked at me and saw nothing, no future, no strength, no worth beyond basic technical competence. That assessment became fuel. 7 years of proving her wrong. Not because he was angry, though anger was part of it initially. Because he wanted to demonstrate that someone's evaluation of your current state doesn't define your possible trajectory. He pursued advanced training. Specialized in tactical systems integration, the technical work that supports strategic operations. Developed expertise that made him valuable not just for implementation, but for planning. Volunteered for difficult assignments in contested sectors where performance under pressure revealed capability beyond routine support work. He built reputation. Slowly, methodically, through sustained demonstration of competence and initiative that Serafina's evaluation had declared he lacked. 3 years ago, he received field commission, transitioned from technical specialist to tactical officer, based on demonstrated capability during crisis situation, where his technical knowledge combined with strategic thinking produced operational success that superior officers recognized as worthy of advancement. 2 years ago, he commanded his first independent operation, successfully, then another, then series of successful operations that established him as rising tactical officer in his own right. 1 year ago, he received promotion to captain, command of significant tactical unit, recognition as officer with potential for continued advancement. And now, 7 years after Serafina dismissed him as nothing more than adequate support personnel, he commands Joint Thessari Human Strike Force operating in the most contested sector of Alliance space. Serafina is also still serving. Her trajectory continued upward for several years after their brief interaction. She advanced to fleet command positions, led major operations, built reputation as exceptional tactical leader. Then circumstances changed. Strategic decisions that seemed sound initially proved problematic as situations evolved. Operations she commanded succeeded tactically but created political complications. Her aggressive command style, which had been asset during rising phase, became liability when diplomatic considerations became more important than pure tactical victory. 2 years ago, she was reassigned from fleet command to advisory positions. Not demotion exactly, but lateral movement that those familiar with military politics recognized as removing her from command track. Her reputation remained strong based on past achievements, but her trajectory had plateaued rather than continuing upward. 1 year ago, she requested return to active tactical command. The request was declined. Her advisory work was valued, but the political complications from her previous command decisions made military leadership reluctant to place her in positions where similar complications might recur. She's been in professional limbo since, technically serving in positions of responsibility, but without the command authority or operational significance that defined her earlier career. Now crisis has emerged in David's operational sector. Separatist forces using new tactical approaches that alliance forces struggle to counter. Standard response protocols aren't working. Casualties are mounting. The sector is approaching critical instability that could cascade into broader regional conflict. Alliance Command is mobilizing resources, bringing in specialists with expertise in unconventional tactical situations, trying to stabilize deteriorating circumstances before collapse becomes inevitable. Commander Serafina is assigned to David's operational command as tactical advisor. Her expertise in unconventional engagement, the same aggressive tactical thinking that created political complications in her fleet command, is exactly what current crisis requires. She arrives at David's command facility, reports for assignment, enters his office where he's reviewing operational data. She stops when she sees him. Recognition flickers across her features. She remembers the junior technician from 7 years ago. Clearly didn't expect to find him commanding the tactical unit she's been assigned to advise. He looks up from the operational data, meets her eyes with calm professionalism that shows no indication of how this moment feels after 7 years. "Commander Serafina," he says formally, "welcome to Strike Force Meridian. I've reviewed your service record and your tactical expertise. Your advisory support will be valuable as we address current crisis conditions." "Captain Chen," she responds, also formal, also professional, but the words carry weight beyond just standard military courtesy. She's addressing him with rank that didn't exist 7 years ago when she evaluated him as having no potential worth command attention. They conduct the initial briefing. David presents operational situation, separatist tactical approaches, failed alliance response attempts, current casualty trends, strategic implications if sector instability continues escalating. Serafina listens with focused attention that military professionals develop through years of processing tactical information, asks clarifying questions, begins formulating initial assessments about what unconventional approaches might address situations where conventional responses failed. The briefing is professional, effective. Both officers doing their jobs competently despite the personal history that neither acknowledges. After briefing concludes, Serafina remains. "Captain, may I speak with you briefly about non-operational matters?" "Of course," David responds, gestures for her to continue. "7 years ago," she begins, "I evaluated your potential as limited to basic technical support work. I stated that I saw no future development worth command investment. That evaluation was," she pauses, choosing words carefully, "that evaluation was based on limited observation and was clearly incorrect given your subsequent career development." "The evaluation was based on accurate observation of my capabilities at that time," David responds neutrally. "People develop. Initial assessments don't define final trajectories. Nevertheless, she continues, the dismissive phrasing I used, calling you nothing more than what you currently were, that was unnecessarily harsh regardless of observational accuracy. I should have provided professional assessment without dismissive characterization. Acknowledged, David says. Is there anything else you wanted to address about our previous interaction? She studies him, trying to read whether his neutral professionalism conceals resentment or whether he genuinely processed her evaluation as past event without ongoing significance. No, she says finally. That was all I wanted to address. I look forward to working with you on current operational challenges. She departs, leaves David alone with operational data and with thoughts about seeing her again after 7 years. She said I was nothing. Years passed. Wars reshaped the stars, and I became something she never expected. Now she stands before me in my command, offering professional assessment that was clearly incorrect. But we both know the real test isn't past evaluation. It's whether we can work together effectively despite that history. Over following weeks, they worked together addressing the tactical crisis. Serafina's expertise proves immediately valuable. Her unconventional tactical thinking identifies approaches that David's more conventional training hadn't considered. His command experience and technical knowledge provide practical framework for implementing her theoretical approaches. They develop effective professional partnership, mutual respect emerging from recognizing each other's genuine competence despite personal history complicating the dynamic. But the crisis worsens before their combined efforts can stabilize it. Separatist forces escalate faster than alliance response can counter. What began as sector instability is approaching regional catastrophe that will require massive resource commitment or acceptance of strategic loss that alliance can't afford politically or militarily. Alliance command delivers ultimatum. Stabilize within 30 days or the sector will be designated for strategic withdrawal, abandoning contested territory, accepting losses, admitting failure to maintain alliance presence in region that holds significant symbolic and practical importance. David and Serafina have 30 days to prevent collapse. The pressure transforms their working relationship from professional cooperation into intense collaboration, where success depends on trusting each other's judgment completely. 2 weeks into the 30-day deadline, breakthrough opportunity emerges. Intelligence identifies vulnerability in separatist command structure, flaw in their operational security that creates temporary window for decisive strike. The opportunity is narrow, requires unconventional approach, demands accepting significant tactical risk for potential strategic gain. David develops operational plan exploiting the vulnerability. Serafina reviews it and identifies critical flaw. The approach David designed is too conservative. It reduces immediate tactical risk but doesn't capitalize fully on the opportunity. If they're going to accept the inherent danger, they need to commit completely rather than hedging. They argue about it. Professional disagreement that becomes heated as deadline pressure and operational stakes make the decision carry enormous weight. Your plan is sound but insufficient, Serafina states. We need aggressive commitment to actually exploit this window. Half measures will waste the opportunity without reducing the risk proportionally. Your aggressive approach increases casualties beyond acceptable parameters, David counters. The strategic gain doesn't justify the additional personnel we'd lose executing your version versus mine. Your acceptable parameters are too conservative, she responds. You're prioritizing immediate safety over strategic necessity. This might be our only chance to prevent sector collapse. We need to commit fully. I won't sacrifice personnel unnecessarily, David states firmly. There's difference between calculated risk and recklessness. Your approach crosses that line. 7 years ago you were technician who implemented others' plans, Serafina says, frustration breaking through professional control. Now you command tactical operations, but you're still thinking like support personnel. Conservative, risk-averse, unwilling to make hard choices that command requires. The words hang between them, echo of her original assessment, suggesting that despite 7 years of development, he's still fundamentally limited in ways she identified initially. David goes very still. Is that your professional assessment? That my tactical judgment is impaired by thinking like support personnel? She realizes what she just said, how it connects to their history. I didn't mean that came out wrong. Your command capability is clearly demonstrated. But in this specific situation, I believe you're being too conservative. Because I think like support personnel, David repeats. Because fundamentally I'm nothing more than adequate technician who lacks strategic thinking that actual command requires. That's not what I said, she protests. That's exactly what you said, David responds quietly. 7 years later, different context, but same fundamental assessment. I'm limited, conservative, not capable of the aggressive strategic thinking that real commanders demonstrate. I was frustrated, she says. The comment was unfair. Your command capability is genuine. I've seen it over these weeks working together. But this specific operational decision, I genuinely believe aggressive approach is necessary regardless of my poor phrasing of that position. They reach compromise. Operational plan that commits more aggressively than David's initial approach, but with additional safeguards addressing his casualty concerns. Neither is fully satisfied, but both recognize that compromise might be optimal approach given their different risk assessments. The operation executes. It's partially successful, exploits the vulnerability enough to create significant separatist disruption, but doesn't achieve complete strategic breakthrough that Serafina's full aggressive approach might have produced. Casualties are moderate, more than David wanted, fewer than Serafina's approach would have risked. The partial success creates just enough momentum that, combined with their sustained efforts over remaining 2 weeks, sector stabilization becomes achievable. Not complete victory, but sufficient progress that Alliance Command withdraws the withdrawal ultimatum, crisis averted, sector maintained, strategic loss prevented. After operational completion, Serafina requests private meeting with David. The comment I made during our planning argument, she begins, about you thinking like support personnel, she struggles with the admission. That was me falling back on assessment I made 7 years ago when I couldn't reconcile your conservative approach with needing aggressive tactics. I was wrong to frame disagreement that way. You believe I'm fundamentally conservative, David observes. That 7 years of development didn't change my basic approach to risk and command decisions. That initial assessment, even if phrased poorly during argument, reflects what you actually think. I think you're more conservative than I am, she clarifies. That's legitimate difference in command philosophy rather than limitation. But when I'm frustrated and disagreeing with your approach, I fall into thinking of that conservatism as limitation that you need to overcome rather than as valid alternative philosophy that produces different but not inferior results. Why? David asks directly. Why does disagreement make you default to thinking my approach is limited rather than different? She's silent for a long moment. Then, because accepting that your approach is different but equally valid means accepting that my assessment 7 years ago was completely wrong rather than just poorly phrased. It means accepting that I missed seeing significant capability in someone I dismissed. That's hard admission for someone whose career was built on accurately assessing tactical situations and people. So it's easier to maintain that I'm fundamentally limited, just in different ways than you initially thought, than to fully accept that your evaluation was wrong, David summarizes. Yes, she admits quietly. That's the psychology I'm operating with even when I know intellectually that it's not accurate. 2 months after the crisis resolution, new situation develops. Not in David's operational sector, in region where Serafina previously held fleet command before her reassignment. The political complications from her earlier command decisions are creating renewed problems as consequences of those decisions continue cascading. Alliance Command needs someone familiar with the region and the political dynamics to address the emerging complications. Serafina is obvious choice. She understands the situation better than anyone, but her previous role in creating the complications makes command reluctant to assign her officially. David receives request from Alliance Command. Take temporary command of the region with Serafina as your advisor. Use her expertise without formally placing her back in command position that would create political problems. It's unusual arrangement. David's tactical expertise is in different area. The region isn't his natural assignment, but Alliance Command trusts his judgment and believes his presence will provide political cover for utilizing Serafina's essential expertise. He accepts, brings Serafina with him to address complications in region where she previously commanded. The situation is complex, political factions positioning against each other. Military decisions required despite political implications. Separatist forces exploiting alliance internal tensions. Everything that makes command difficult when tactical clarity gets obscured by political maneuvering. Serafina navigates it with expertise David doesn't possess. She knows the factions, understands the history, sees the political dimensions he's blind to. Her previous command experience here, even though it created current complications, gives her knowledge that's essential for addressing those complications. But she's advising rather than commanding, providing expertise to David who makes final decisions despite her superior knowledge of the specific situation. The reversal is profound. 7 years ago she commanded while he provided technical support. Now he commands while she provides essential expertise from advisory position. The power dynamic has completely inverted. She handles it with professionalism, provides clear advice, defers to his authority when he makes decisions that differ from her recommendations, supports his command publicly even when she disagrees with specific choices privately. 1 month into the assignment, particularly difficult decision emerges. Political factions demanding alliance action that Serafina knows from experience will create more problems than it solves. David is being pressured to approve the action. Serafina advises against it but can't provide the clear alternative that would make rejection politically sustainable. David is alone in his command office, reviewing the situation when Serafina enters. "Captain," she says, then stops, starts again. "David, first name, not rank, personal rather than professional. I need to speak with you about something beyond formal advisory capacity." "Go ahead," he says. She stands there, struggles visibly with what she wants to say. Then, "I need you." The words come out barely above whisper. "I need you to make decision I can't make myself. I know what the right choice is. Reject the political pressure, maintain operational integrity despite short-term political cost. But I can't make that decision from advisory position. You have the authority. I need you to use it in ways I can't. You're asking me to make unpopular decision you'd make if you had command authority," David clarifies. "Yes," she confirms. "I'm asking you to have the command courage I've developed over years of experience but can't exercise from current position. I need you to be the commander I used to be before political complications removed me from command track." The admission costs her, visible in her posture, her expression, the controlled way she's holding herself. This is the woman who 7 years ago dismissed him as nothing, now standing before him whispering that she needs him to exercise authority she no longer has. "Why me specifically?" David asks. "Why does it need to be me making this decision rather than any commander who Alliance could have assigned to this situation?" "Because you've proven you make decisions based on operational necessity rather than political convenience." she responds. Because your conservatism, the thing I criticized, is actually strength in situation like this where pressure is to act rashly. Because you'll make right decision even knowing it costs you politically. And because, she pauses, then continues quietly, because 7 years ago I told you that you were nothing more than adequate support personnel. Now I'm standing here needing you to be exceptional commander. The irony of that, needing you to be exactly what I said you'd never become, that's not lost on me. David studies her, sees the pride being swallowed, the admission being made. The person who once looked at him and saw nothing now acknowledging she needs him to be something significant. I'll make the decision based on operational necessity, he says. Not because you need me to, because it's the right decision regardless of political cost. But I want you to understand what you're actually asking. You're not just asking me to make difficult command choice. You're asking me to validate that the person you dismissed as having no future worth investment has developed into commander, whose judgment you trust more than your own in this situation. Yes, she says quietly. That's exactly what I'm asking, and that's exactly what makes this admission so difficult. I was wrong about you, completely wrong, and now my effectiveness depends on you being what I said you'd never become. He makes the decision she advised, rejects the political pressure, maintains operational integrity despite knowing it creates political cost. The decision is unpopular in ways that will affect his career trajectory. But it's right decision for the situation regardless of cost. Serafina watches him make it, sees him accept the political consequences without hesitation, recognizes command courage that 7 years ago she wouldn't have believed he possessed. After decision is implemented, she speaks to him privately. Thank you for making choice I couldn't make from advisory position, for being commander I needed despite our history. The history where you told me I was nothing, David observes. Yes, she confirms. That history, the assessment I've spent weeks working alongside you proving was completely wrong. The dismissal that's made this entire situation profoundly humbling. Because I need help from person I once dismissed as having no worth beyond basic technical competence. Is that apology? David asks. It's recognition, she responds. Apology implies mistake I regret. This is recognition that my evaluation shaped both our trajectories. You became something I never expected partly because I told you that you were nothing. My career plateaued partly because I made decisions similar to dismissing your potential, failing to see capability that was present but not obvious. We're both dealing with consequences of that evaluation 7 years later. You're saying dismissing me was a pivotal moment for both of us, David summarizes. Yes, she agrees. For you it was motivation. For me it was first example of pattern, dismissing potential that didn't match my expectations, that eventually created political complications ending my command track. We both remember that moment, for different reasons, with different impacts, but equally significant. 3 months after the regional assignment concludes, both David and Serafina return to their regular postings. The intense collaboration is over. Professional relationship returns to occasional interaction rather than daily partnership. But something has shifted. Mutual respect developed through crisis work. Understanding of each other's genuine capabilities. Recognition of how dismissal 7 years ago created trajectory neither expected. 6 months later, David receives promotion. Not dramatic elevation, just continued advancement along command track he's been following since field commission, but significant enough that promotion ceremony occurs with senior alliance officers present. Serafina attends. Not required, she's not in his direct command chain, but she comes anyway, stands among observers watching him receive recognition for continued command excellence. After ceremony she approaches. Congratulations on promotion. Well-deserved recognition of your demonstrated capability. Thank you, David responds. Your advisory support during crisis operations contributed significantly to outcomes that warranted this recognition. I provided expertise, she acknowledges. You provided command decision-making that made expertise valuable rather than just theoretical knowledge. Those are different contributions. They're quiet for a moment, then Serafina says, 7 years ago, I told you that you were nothing more than adequate support personnel, that I saw no future development worth command investment. Today you're being promoted for exceptional command performance while I remain in advisory positions. The reversal is, she pauses, searching for word, profound. The reversal is consequence of different choices and different circumstances, David responds. Your career trajectory was affected by political complications from aggressive tactical decisions. Mine was affected by conservative approach that avoided creating similar complications. Neither path was inherently superior. They just produced different outcomes when combined with circumstances we encountered. That's generous interpretation, she observes. More generous than I deserve given how dismissive I was about your potential. What do you want from me? David asks directly. Acknowledgement that you were wrong. Satisfaction that your dismissal motivated my development. Recognition that our positions reversed. What are you seeking through these conversations about 7-year-old evaluation? She considers. I think I'm seeking understanding about whether that evaluation, and the reversal it produced, whether that creates permanent barrier between us, or whether professional respect we developed during crisis work can exist despite that history. Why does it matter? David asks. We work together occasionally. Professional respect is sufficient for effective collaboration. Why does it matter whether deeper relationship is possible given our history? Because, she says carefully, I respect your command capability genuinely now after working closely with you. And I'd value continued professional partnership, not just occasional collaboration, but sustained working relationship, if that's possible despite me having dismissed you initially. But I recognize that my evaluation might have created barrier that prevents deeper professional trust, regardless of respect, developed subsequently. You want to know if I hold grudge, David summarizes. I want to know if the person I dismissed as nothing can work with me without that dismissal creating resentment that undermines collaboration, she clarifies. David thinks about honest answer. I don't hold grudge. I processed your evaluation as motivation years ago. It doesn't create resentment now. But I also don't forget it. Working with you requires navigating awareness that you once looked at me and saw nothing worth investment. That awareness doesn't prevent professional respect. We've demonstrated that. But it affects whether relationship develops beyond professional into genuine partnership. Because you can't fully trust someone who dismissed your worth, she observes. Because trust requires believing someone sees you accurately, David responds. You see me accurately now. I believe that. But the history of not seeing me accurately initially creates question about whether current perception is genuine or whether it's recalibrated assessment that could shift again if circumstances change. That's fair concern, she acknowledges. Based on reasonable interpretation of our history. I don't know how to address it beyond sustained demonstration over time that current assessment is genuine rather than temporary recalibration. 1 year after the regional assignment, Alliance Command creates new position, Joint Tactical Oversight coordinating human and Thessari military operations in multiple sectors. Position requires commander with proven capability in complex situations, an advisor with deep expertise in unconventional tactics. Alliance Command offers it to David as commander, with recommendation that he requests Serafina as primary advisor. He considers the role would be significant advancement. Working with Serafina would be professionally valuable. But it would also mean sustained close collaboration with person whose dismissal of him 7 years ago still affects their dynamic. He accepts the position, requests Serafina as advisor. She responds to the request with private communication. I'm honored by the request, but I need to know, are you requesting me because my expertise is valuable for the role, or because you want opportunity to prove something about how far you've come since I dismissed you? David responds honestly. Both. Your expertise is genuinely valuable, and working with you in role where I'm commander and your advisor, there's satisfaction in that reversal that I won't pretend isn't part of my motivation. But primarily, I'm requesting you because we work well together, and because joint tactical oversight will benefit from your unconventional thinking combined with my conservative implementation. She accepts the assignment. They work together over following years, building sustained professional partnership. The history of her dismissal doesn't disappear, it remains present in their dynamic, but it becomes context rather than barrier. Acknowledged element of their relationship rather than unspoken tension. During conversation 3 years into their partnership, she reflects, "When I told you that you were nothing, that you had no future worth investment, I was looking at who you were and failing to see who you could become. That failure of imagination shaped both our careers. You became something I never expected. I learned, eventually, that dismissing potential because it doesn't match current performance is professional mistake with lasting consequences." And now David asks, years later, different positions, different relationship, what do you see when